You get bad relations, right? People don't trust, like me. I'm like, should I actually rent a car and drive in the morning? Because that might be a better option, because at least I know I'll get from A to B. This is my thinking, right now, because it's been too much here. So I don't have trust in them anymore. I don't know if I can get from A to B with the trains in Sweden today. What happens then? I start looking at other options, right? You lose money. What happens with the strategy if you lose money? You can't make any. Because if there's no money, you can't put money in investment and R&D and development for the future. So what you really need is a holistic view on risk management. To realize that all this comes together. You can't just address these risks and these in silos. You can't just do this ad hoc. You need to bring them together and integrate them, because when you put them together, that's when you really see how these risks affect each other. And that's when you really understand what situation you are in. That's when you really understand when you put your company into the context where you are and can bring in all those external risks as well and actually start understanding. Can I ask someone where I'm on time? Because I don't have a watch and I talk a lot. Bad combination. Okay. Hey, I have plenty of time. That's a bad thing. If I talk too fast, by the way, let me know, because I get enthusiastic and I get away. So anyway, so this is my take on this. Put the risks together. You can't separate them. Don't do departments. Don't do different aspects. You need to bring them together and look at your risk together, because that's the only way of understanding what you're facing. So you saw that slide. I'm going to talk about the space. I'm like, after being 10 years in the energy industry and oil and gas and so on, I got really excited to go into this. And I'm telling you, I don't have to lie about where I work anymore. That's awesome. Especially men love this. Every time I go and say, like, I work in the space, they're like, can I come see? Can I join you to work? It's like so awesome. And I'm also very, very popular among all the kids, because I have kids visiting me, like sisters' kids and friends' kids come all the time because they want to see the rockets. So what we do, because I need to tell you a bit about Swedish Space Corporation, because I thought because now I've been talking about all the problems and issues, I'm going to try to show you how you can actually work with risks in a company. So what do we do? Just to give you a brief understanding of what we do and how we deal with risks. You see science services, that's one of our business areas. Have anyone heard about S-Range? Yes, there's men's hands going up again. All the guys have heard about S-Range. Girls go, what? Unfortunately. S-Range is 50 k's outside of Kiruna, northern Sweden. Where if you see the Swedish map, there's like kind of in the top there, it's like a triangle almost. That's our impact area. That means that we shoot rockets, not manned, but for science purposes, and we can land them in that little area. It's us and the Sami people who have access to that. So we do that, and we also do big balloons that we put payload on, and they do atmospheric experiments. So that's one of the interesting parts I like quite a lot about our business. The other one is our largest, one of the largest business divisions, or the largest, is satellite management services. As you see there, it's a satellite antenna. So what we do is we bring down the information from our customers' satellites, and we forward it to the customer, basically. So we have those antennas. We have a park of them up in S-Range, different kind of antennas, but then we also have a network around the globe. I'm going to show you a map later. Then the engineering services, those are the guys who sit in control room. We're actually kind of a consulting firm, so we rent out this knowledge to customers like the European Space Agency, for example. And what they do is that they help in different missions. For example, when you launch a satellite, you put it on a rocket sometimes, and then you shoot rocket up, and then you release the satellite. And then you have to make sure the satellite ends up in orbit. That's very crucial, a very high-risk step. These guys help the customers with making sure that thing happens. Technology, 3 different small companies that we have. They do different kind of nanotechnology. They do green propulsion for small sats and stuff. So that's also a part. So this is really what we do. 550 employees, about 25 nationalities. I don't know where we got that number. We're in 18 locations in 10 countries. So we're talking risk management, talking global, we're talking space. It's pretty complex. Suddenly oil and gas feels really easy because this is complex. So you can see we don't know, I mean, you see we have Hawaii, we have antennas in Alaska. We don't have people there sitting actually, it's actually antennas. Offices in Australia, China, Thailand, Europe, US, Chile. That's main offices. So we really are a global team. Pretty small company, but still very global. We have operations 24/7. Customers and satellites are up there all the time. We're doing space. There's no borders in space. Makes it a bit tricky. Different cultures, definitely different business cultures. And we have different ways of looking at risk. So how do we deal with it? I can take an example from I was in Africa and I came from corporate and they said, and I knew, like everybody knows working in Swedish, bribery, 0 tolerance, corruption, 0 tolerance. You just do not engage in that kind of activity. So I come out to the village and I'm going to talk about what we do, tell them about operations and prepare them for, we're going to come in here and this is going to happen. They do the welcoming effort, like Liberian welcoming ceremony for the village, and I get a bowl. And my staff is behind me, I'm like, tell me what I'm supposed to do because I don't get all this. So they whisper, you need to put money there. I'm like, I'm not putting money. I'm like, you need to get offended. You need to put, it's village culture. You're the rich woman, you need to put money there. I'm like, no, I'm not putting, in my culture, that's bribery. So he's right here. Whose culture should I? Should I come and say, hey guys, I know you don't have a social welfare system, there's no taxes coming from the government to your village to help you get food, but in my culture, this is bribery, I can't give you anything. That's a very basic example, but seriously, this is what we're dealing with. If you take that out of the situation and look at the risks, we see risks from different cultures. In some cultures, it's okay to take your customer for a football game. In Chile, for example. That's fine, it's culture, it's okay. Sweden, it's not. So there's different kind of cultures, there's different kind of risks, and you have to decide as a corporate global company, what do we stand for, and what are the rules? Sometimes your rules have to be higher, your internal rules have to be higher than actually the law in the country, but your company rules can never be lower than the law in a country. So you really, I think this is where many people go wrong when they buy up companies. They don't realize that these kind of things has to be decided on before you buy companies and put them together. Because otherwise your risk increases of actually doing business in the wrong way. So at SSC, we've decided to work on 4 principles to make sure that we can actually manage our risks in a good way. And it comes down to 3 things. To create a clear structure, to create a SSC culture, our culture. We have to decide what our culture is and what we stand by. And also to create a leadership that promotes that is courageous, who stands up for this and actually creates this awareness. So the early detection and rapid response principle is really to create an organization where risks, incidents, and events that can affect operations or trust of the company shall be immediately handled and reported as quickly as possible so that quick measures can be taken to avoid any development of a crisis or interruption operation. So you need to create that kind of culture and a leadership that promotes that your employees actually take action when they see something. That actually when they feel something might go wrong, that they have that proactive thinking in the daily work they do, and that they actually take an action on it. Not thinking, I'll handle it later, or I don't care, it's not my thing, right? It might be someone else. Någon is very famous. Someone else will do it. So you need to do that. The responsibility principle. The unit responsible for a specific operation is also responsible for the risks and to manage any disruption. That might sound like, this sounds like common sense maybe to you, but this is not common sense in business. Definitely not. Especially this one. Oh, Liisa is the risk manager in Stockholm. She'll deal with it. I can't do that. You saw the locations. Can I see all the risk that is globally? No. So you have to teach people that you have actual responsibility that you need to take, and actually release that fear that many people have when it comes to risk, because it's hard sometimes to communicate risk. Similarity principle. An operations organization shall, as much as possible, remain the same when handling disruptive events, and found risk shall be managed early on. It means that it can't be that every time you see a risk, something happening, you can't bring in the big task force. You need to be able to have the same organization dealing with this, kind of not making it too complex so you always have to bring in extra people or extra staff, but actually can deal with interruptions in a good way. For example, when your IT department calls and there's an interruption, everybody calls the IT department telling them how stupid they are because they can't handle and what the consequences are on the clients. Why don't you just let them be instead, right? Let them talk, maybe have communication tools that they can communicate and say, hey, we have an interruption, so it reaches all the phones of the employees, so they don't have to bother them. So they get information all the time that we have. This has happened, we can deal with it. Good way of dealing with getting technology to resolve so that the similar organization can deal with the things, right? And proximity principle are very important when you work with, as we do internationally. And that is that a risk or a disruptive event shall be managed where it happens by those concerned with it and responsible for the operations. So you can't really have me flying into Chile to tell them how to deal with a risk, or they have to be able, and you as a leader, as a manager, have to give them the trust to be able to do that. And this is hard on many managers. They have a hard time because some people want to be in control and know everything. But you need to create that. You have to build that trust, and you have to let go of your fear as a manager and train your staff to be able to deal with this. But it requires that you are transparent. Doesn't mean that they can sit in Chile and do whatever they want to. They have to communicate all the time what's happening. And we also have to see, as a company, that if I do something in Sweden, that might affect my staff in Chile and their clients, or our clients. So you have to always be transparent and say what's happening and build that system. The information flows very freely in the organization. Sounds like common sense. It's not common sense. It takes hard work to get that kind of culture in a company. Also, simplicity. This is what I teach when I'm out there. When I do my training with the staff, it's not a very complex number crunching models where they can't hardly follow where the numbers end up and come out. It's just this, 5 steps. Make sure that you have identification in your daily routines. Having a way of maybe in your regular meetings with the staff, actually have a risk as one of the topics. So you start addressing it in a normal way, open way. Do we have any risks? What do we have? What's happening? When you have an incident, go back and see, okay, how can we learn from this? What are the risks? How did we deal with it? So integrate that in your business process in a very simple way to create that atmosphere and that culture. Analysis. When you find the risk, analyze them. But be clear on, is it a symptom or a cause? Because if you start treating a symptom, the issue is going to be there. And I think some of you might have, back in the days, we did the why, varför 5 times. Anyone heard about that design method, like super duper, really hard? That's awesome here. Ask why 5 times, and you're usually down to the cause. Valuation, maybe a bit trickier sometimes. How much does the loss actually cost? This is what you need to be able to talk with the corporate guys, right? The management. But sometimes you have risks that you can, and I struggle with that all the time. All the risks can't be valued. Do I skip presenting them, or do I try to hide them somewhere so I don't have to deal with, the questions? No. They should be up there. You should find ways of communicating those in the same way as you do the one you actually can value. Because just because you can't value them doesn't mean that you don't bring it up. You need to discuss them. It should be on those charts. So valuation doesn't always be in monetary value. You can value it in man hours to fix it, for example. Man hours we will lose, for those other things. Mitigation. When you valued your risk, you come to mitigation. Does everyone understand what mitigation means? How do you reduce the risk? You can invest them. Tell the board and say, hey, we need this many millions to get rid of this high risk. We need to invest it. We need to reduce it, remove the risk. You can do it through insurances another way. You make sure you have insurances to cover a risk. Business continuity planning. Anyone who knows what that is? You make sure that there's continuation in your business, even if something happened, a risk falls out. For example, basics, IT server room goes down. Boom, IT stands still. What can you do? What is continuity planning? Make sure you have a secondary server room somewhere. Different location with different power supply in different part of the city or even in another city with different fibers and cables going. So if that goes down, that is mirrored so you can still run your business. No interruptions. That is business continuity, making sure that if something happens with your business, you can still go on. You can move your staff maybe to another location if you have a fire. That was the World Trade Center thing. You move your staff to another location. But some risks you just have to accept. You can't handle them. Black swans, for example. That's when you have to connect your crisis management plan.